So what does anti-disciplinary mean? If you think about a traditional academic department, you have a collection of people with very similar backgrounds, very similar training, looking at very similar problems. In physics, there are a massive sea of applied mathematicians. And so when you look at a problem, you look at a problem with a very specific toolkit. When you are trying to solve a problem that doesn't fit into that toolkit, you have this difficulty that in a traditional department, you can't bring in all the skill sets. What if I need a psychologist, a designer, somebody who is a doctor? Anti-disciplinary means you look at a problem and you bring in all of the skill sets necessary to address and attack that problem. The Media Lab is an incredibly unusual institution. It consists of 25 different groups. It's about 150 graduate students. It's a graduate-only program, and it has its own little academic department, so it can hire its own faculty, set its own agenda. The first 2 years of a program at the MIT Media Lab are a diverse set of classes that touch on design, technology. You can take traditional courses from any academic department in order to build up a skill set and a knowledge base that's relevant for a problem that you want to solve. So I designed rooms for children, I worked on a scooter, I designed software, all in this process of being educated in how to think creatively about problems. What you see here on the screen is an example of a project called the City Car. Now, Bill Mitchell is an architect, and he'd said, well, what if we, what can we learn from the auto industry? If we go out to the auto industry, they have manufacturing technologies and design processes that could benefit architecture. And after a couple of years of trying to bring through auto manufacturers, he said, well, wait a minute, what if we reversed this? What if we looked at the cities we wanted to build and live in? And how would you design a car to be optimal to satisfying the design constraints of that city? And one of the biggest things that came up in a city, of course, is space. And what they wanted to do is say, how do I get a car to compress into half its space? Well, when you think about the design of a car, you've got this problem of all the linkages between steering and the motor and the wheels, and you're kind of stuck. So everybody said it was impossible. So they turned it over through a series of design brainstorming processes, and eventually came and said, well, what if we put steering, power, control, and everything into a single wheel? So they invented a new wheel and started out with a 3-wheeled scooter with one smart wheel. You controlled it remotely through wireless. All it really needed was a power supply and a way to hook it onto the chassis of the vehicle. And so I'll let Bill Mitchell himself.
This is a little electric automobile that we call the City Car. It has some features about it that are completely different from the traditional automobiles that you're used to. Firstly, there's no engine and there's no traditional drivetrain. The motors are in the wheels. The wheels are digitally controlled so that they can perform all sorts of interesting maneuvers. They can drive in all of the normal ways that you're used to. They can also spin around so that they point inwards, and we can execute what we call an O-turn rather than a U-turn. We can park sideways. And in order to save space on parking, this vehicle folds up. It's something that's made possible by the use of these robot wheels, as we call them. Let me show you how this folds up.
So this is, what they realized is that eventually to convince people this was possible, you had to go build it. This is a half-size prototype that they built and demonstrated. And they're taking aspects of this technology into trials in European cities. It's hard to get Americans to think creatively about their cities. But there are a number of installations where they're looking at distribution systems. What if this was a utility and not an owned product? And how would we distribute that utility throughout the city? And in fact, one of the projects, if you're familiar, there are a few projects in Europe where there are bicycles being distributed in similar ways throughout a city as a utility. And a lot of that ideas behind that were actually generated in this lab. So another group called Human Dynamics is a man who got his career starting in computer vision, but got more and more interested in what he called honest signals. It's a professor named Sandy Pentland. And so Sandy collected around him a set of behavioral economists, psychologists, sociologists. And one day, this is an example of the kinds of crazy things that happen at the Media Lab, this group of people heard about a challenge called the Red Balloon Challenge. It was Tuesday. The challenge was on Saturday. And the challenge was there are going to be 10 red balloons anchored at some random place throughout the United States. How quickly can you design a distributed social networking infrastructure to find and aggregate the locations of all 10 balloons? It's one of many examples of an institution that encourages students to not necessarily work on the next grant, but to find problems of interest, ask unusual questions about them, and attack them aggressively. And I think that one of the things that makes this possible is at the Media Lab, there's no specific research agenda. The funding is completely undirected. So your only requirement, and the way in fact the lab was set up by its founder, Nicholas Negroponte, is do something different. Every faculty has a different specialty rather than the same specialty. So it's the diversity of thoughts and perspectives. And if you think the faculty are diverse, wait till you meet the students. I think perhaps the most enjoyable experience were some of those early classes where I'm sitting next to a designer, a dancer, another engineer, a scientist, somebody who's working on prosthetics, but they're building a wet lab in order to build muscle tissue that can be used as actuators so you can lighten the load on prosthetics. And so constantly you're surrounded by this tremendous diversity of thought, and you have no other requirement than to be cool in presenting ideas that are powerful and transformative. And one of the big things that happened at the Media Lab in the last few years was with the prior director, Frank Moss, was a shift to, rather than focusing on the transition into the digital age, it was to focus on a transition into improving the human condition and human health. And that has become a major theme for many of the groups within the lab. And my own little story in this is I was working in the semiconductor industry, and I got bored and went back to school because I was interested in solving the problem of why are computers so difficult to get them to do what you want. It's like I can have 5 ideas a week, but I can only implement like 1 every 3 or 4 months. And so there is this huge discontinuity between my own idea generation and my ability to execute. So I was working on programs where you could talk to them and they would actually do, it was kind of a natural language scripting language. And what happened is Frank said, well, this is interesting and all, but how are you going to affect the lives of other people? And so I said, well, what's a problem that I can help other people solve problems more effectively? And so I met Amy Farber through Frank.
Lymphangiomyomatosis.
Which is LAM.
It's not really an acronym. The short version is LAM.
Your body is basically forming tumors.
Cyst growth.
Predominantly throughout your lung area, but it can be throughout your whole body.
It can be. The fatal part is the lungs. You need them.
Have they made any strides at all?
It's commonly misdiagnosed as
emphysema, other lung disorders.
Other lung disorders in non-smoking women in their childbearing years. On average, people go 4 years without a correct diagnosis.
All this clinical discussion doesn't answer
what
a
we can
single
do
question.
about it.
Not that so much, no. How have you been dealing with this? And that's really the question.
So we've started an organization called the LAM Treatment Alliance. And following that, we started to raise public awareness and raise money to fund research.
I want to live. I'm not ready to die. I've got a lot of life left in me, and I'll do anything in my power to help find a treatment in the fastest time possible.
So when I met Amy, she brought a very interesting story. Is that researchers in this disease, unless they see, there's only a few researchers who are also treating clinicians, which means most of the people looking at the biology of LAM have never actually talked to a patient. And so you might have an idea, but any of you who've worked in the medical field know that just going out and asking a group of patients a question means going through the IRB, which means months of work, which means postdoc time, which is expensive, and you have to raise grants to keep your staff funded. So you don't ask the questions. And time again, when Amy was able to bring together researchers with patients, she said there'd be an aha. She'd start to talk to patients and they'd say, well, yeah, half of you have this experience. Wait a minute. How many women with osteoporosis, who are on osteoporosis medications also have LAM, and is there a difference in outcome? You cannot answer these questions today. The data is locked up. People don't talk. Everything is siloed. So, well, this is not a science problem. It's not a biology problem. It's an information problem. And I think that's a big theme of the conference, is that much of what we see happening in medicine is the right ideas not getting from the places where they are to the places they need to be. So we built a couple of platforms with the LAM Treatment Alliance, trying to focus on how do we unlock all of these silos? How do we get researchers to connect directly to patients? And one of the projects that's come out of that is a patient-initiated question, an unusual phenomena that was identified in the patient population, may affect the short-term behavior of lamb cells, and I don't have time to get into the fun part of it. But we actually have an ongoing trial with a bunch of patients volunteering to track their data, put it in online, and it's a global platform. So continuing in this vein of looking at unusual ways of solving problems, this is this project here on the left, which I'll mention briefly. It's called NETRA, and it is essentially reversing the process that's typically used to diagnose refraction problems in the eye, and thus giving you a diagnosis for our lens prescription. And today, and this is very classic Western medicine, you go in, there's a giant box. You stick your eyes in the giant box. How many of you go look in these giant boxes? A few of you, okay. So these are multi-$1,000 boxes. They're very expensive. They require expert human oversight. So they said, well, wait a minute. You know, these boxes require you to sit there. They use the laser. They bounce it off your eye. They do all these measurements. You've got to calibrate it correctly. What if we had the human in the loop? So they built a very simple, now it's a couple dollar device that you stick over an iPhone. And essentially it asks you to do a little adjustment to move two lines together. So what it's doing is essentially measuring the refraction of your eye through a couple of rounds. So in a few minutes, you're able to get a correct diagnosis. By changing the way you looked at the constraints of the problem, you don't need a passive device. You bring the patient into the loop. And I think that's a big theme at the Media Lab, is building loops where we're using and encouraging and inviting patients to become part of the system. And just like putting everything into a single wheel in a car, when you start doing that, you can change the way the entire system is functioning around that particular component. So that's my good friend Hugh Hare, who's a professor at the Media Lab. At the age of 17, he was one of the world's best rock climbers. Got caught in a whiteout, lost both of his legs below the knee. And Hugh, after about a year, said, gosh, you know, I just lost 25 pounds. To a climber, that's like becoming godlike. So Hugh built his own legs and went out and became one of the world's best climbers again. As he started getting problems from doing a little too much climbing, he went back to school. And he started working on prosthetic design and mechanical engineering. So he has a degree in biomechanics. But he started a group at the Media Lab called Biomechatronics. Because he said, you know, the reality is, and this is an insight that comes actually originally from Seymour Papert, who's one of the founders of the Media Lab. You know, he said, how do you convince people that there is a market for the disabled? And Seymour Papert said, you're looking at it all wrong. Everybody's disabled. It's just a matter of degree. You know, we all have some memory problems sometimes. Sometimes we don't feel so good. Sometimes we don't function as fast. Maybe we don't run as fast as we want or could. And so missing a leg shouldn't be a limitation for doing things in your life. So Hugh said there should be such, in the future, there should be no such thing as disabled. It's simply a change in the degree of augmentation. Now I'll show you a project that Hugh has been working on. Don't need to hear the music. So this project, so the biggest problem in building a prosthetic for the ankle is that there's no power. When you walk and you step up, your calf applies power that actually helps lift you. That affects the entire biomechanical evolution of your gait. It affects your spine, your lower back, your legs. So most amputees with prosthetics have secondary injuries. They've got cracks in their bone. They have back problems. They have leg problems. They have muscle strain. And these actually cause additional cost to the care of that patient over the long term. And all you really need is only 10% of the power that comes from the leg. So this is the prototype that's developed in Hugh's group of an actuated leg that uses local sensing to figure out what mode of activity you're in. Are you going up a stairs, down a stairs, running, walking, sitting, driving? And then applies power to improve your gait. And he says the reduction in secondary injury is likely to be an order of magnitude. So the VA has been testing this. People are wearing it all over. He's a startup company called iWalk that he's now producing this for a larger population. And there are a wonderful diversity of projects in the area. But it comes back to saying, you know, if we want to fix the health of an amputee, we want them to be normal, you've got to solve all these constraints. And it's hard to do it with a battery and actuators. So it required innovation and actuation in order to make it work. So the last project, one that I like, is there was a project called HyperScore created at the MIT Media Lab almost 8, 9 years ago now as part of a music program that Professor Todd Mackover was engaged in. HyperScore allowed children to paint pictures and that it would turn those pictures into harmonious music. And you could create all sorts of different kinds of music. Her office mate said, gosh, I've been working with these people who are disabled, paralyzed. Is there a way to enable them to express themselves through music?
We've been collaborating with Tewksbury Hospital, one of the most visionary hospitals that I know of that really believes that music and the arts in particular are a major part of a health program, and they actually prescribe many kinds of art, and particularly music, for curing people. So Dan has been a collaborator of ours now for a few years. We met each other with Adam when we started our project at Tewksbury a few years ago.
There were a couple parts of the work. In the first part, we had to design a new controller system for Dan, and that's work that really only a Media Lab student could love, and a way for him to continuously input information into whatever software we develop.
So we're going to play your piece now. It's called My Eagle Song.
So health, of course, is more than just being fit and walking around. It's having a healthy life, a healthy mind. So when you think about how can you reproduce in your entrepreneurial life or your work life some of the characteristics that are engendered at a place like the Media Lab, think about the importance of diversity, diversity of perspectives. If you're three technologists who only know Ruby on Rails, hire a Lisp programmer and find somebody who has absolutely nothing in common with you guys to look at your problem. It doesn't matter how smart you are. Your background and your toolkit creates blinders. By necessity, those blinders make you very effective at ignoring extraneous detail, except when you need to come up with better ideas, in which case diversity will be your saving grace. Thank you very much.